So Amanda, I take it we won't be wearing any masks.
Interesting, isn't it, Wayne? We've been using probiotics for 2 years.
Yeah, and today's a new one.
Exactly, but we've been using probiotics as PPE.
Oh, okay, okay.
Quite interestingly, so we've been using a spray. It's been a very 2 years, I have to say. Just pulled up the notes. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our session. We're just giving the late arrivals a couple of minutes to join us, and then we will be kicking off by past at the latest. Well, I think we've got a good turnout to get started with. So we'll keep letting people into the room as they arrive. And good morning and welcome again, everybody. My name is Amanda Wild from Umsinzi Healthcare, and I am a member of the SAMED Code Committee. And we'd love to welcome everyone to this morning's Medical Device Code Forum. It's great to see you all here. Just a few formalities before we get started. Please note our disclaimer around conflict of interest and competition law. So please bear those two things in mind during the session. We're also recording this session, and as such, by participating, you're consenting to the recording of the meeting. We're going to welcome every question that you have, so please either put them in the chat or raise your hand at the end of the session, and we'll call on you to give your question to the presenter. So our first session this morning is very well timed. It's regarding the rise of extortion that is targeting businesses in South Africa. And our presenter for this session is Wayne Malgas, who's partner at Control Risks. Extortion targeting businesses has become an unfortunate reality in South Africa, with a number of sectors impacted. Violence and intimidation is often used by the perpetrators to coerce targeted businesses to accede to their demands. And here in this session, we're going to explore some of the trends and the measures that businesses can implement to enhance their resilience and their strength. Today, we're joined by Wayne Malgas, a partner at Control Risk, and Wayne is the partner heading the Johannesburg Office of Control Risks. He joined the company in 2014. He's got more than 25 years of risk advisory and investigative experience, having worked for the South African government as well as private companies. Wayne was previously a Chief Investigating Officer at the Directorate of Special Operations, the DSO, a special specialised law enforcement agency in South Africa that was mandated to investigate serious economic offences and transnational organised crime. He's also served as the head of investigations for the Asset Forfeiture Unit. After leaving the DSO, he joined the Foreign Service of South Africa and served as a senior diplomat in the United Nations Security Council. So Wayne, with that introduction, which is a wonderful, a wonderful set of experience, please kick off with your session. Thank you.
Many thanks, Amanda, and thank you for having me. Colleagues, I will just give you just a second just to share the presentation on the screen. I hope that you can all see the presentation. Amanda, can you see it?
I can see it. It's just a small box in my view. Caroline, can you see it?
Wayne, it's just not in presentation mode.
I'm going to just get into presentation format quickly. One sec. Okay.
Great.
Did it come through?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, Amanda, Caroline, thanks for having me. Just to explain a bit about control risk and how we deal with matters or have come to deal with matters of extortion. Firstly, control risk, we a global risk consultancy with about 41 offices across the world. We started in 1975 with kidnapping for ransom, and eventually our risk solutions to our clients evolved from kidnapping for ransom in 1975 to today, where we have political risk analysts, where we just rate countries according to political and security risks. We have data analysts, we have IT forensics for forensic investigations, as well as security. So we follow trends within countries on an ongoing basis and advise our clients prior to entering a jurisdiction on sectors, on the politics in that country, security of investment, and so forth. So during the course of providing these services to our clients, and just to tell you, we're based in Johannesburg in Sandton. So during the course of providing these services, we've been monitoring extortion, cases of extortion in South Africa. Of late, we found that quite a number of our clients have been targeted by extortion. And we then we deem it necessary to interact with associations, business associations, with groups, and just basically discuss this issue. So today we will deal with extortion, not necessarily linked to any specific sector. Today's session is just also a snapshot of this phenomena in South Africa. It's by no means and even the advice that we give or these recommendations, these are by no means comprehensive. You may find in your situation that there are things that we did not cover in this presentation, and that's basically understandable. So you also, so what we present today is just a high level, fairly generic approach to extortion. But the main point that we want to, that we hope it's takeaway, that I hope it's takeaway from today's session, will be enhancing your resilience, improving your resilience, and that comes through preparedness. So just, so for the session, we'll deal with the phenomena, we'll deal with some of the responses that we have come to, or that our clients have the way that they've responded to these situations, and then also government responses, because we've also been dealing with government at various levels, the presidency, law enforcement, and we'll just tell you what our assessment is of those interactions that we've had with government. And lastly, we'll give a few tips and recommendations, as I said, fairly high level on how companies can improve their resilience and preparedness. There's no template for these things. There are a few things we can do, but there's no one template that says, if I, as a company, do the following, that I'll be safe from it. So starting off with the phenomena, ladies and gentlemen, for the past few years, we've noticed that the rise in extortion, and it's a real rise. The number of cases have gone up, and we try to determine what are the causal factors, where did it come from, and partly, not wholly, but partly, we peg it to 2015, 2016, when former President Zuma mentioned the 30% procurement. And the reason why we say that 30% procurement is because many of the threat actors, the perpetrators, reference this as the justification for the extortion demands. And what we then found is this radical economic transformation that's linked, supposed to be a faction of the African National Congress, the ruling party, and other elements involved in the extortive activities, such as so-called military veterans and so forth. So we also have business people involved in it. The whole gist of it is that the companies have not really transformed, and that black businesses are still left outside of they're not in the mainstream of supply chains and so forth. So they feel that something had to be done, and their response to it is to embark on these demands. So this is it one group. We have found that this is the most prominent group we identified was the Black Business Federation in KwaZulu-Natal, but that's by no means the only one. They are more organized. They recently, a few months ago, had a meeting with the former President Mandela, so they're very much in the news. But that's not the only formation. We have found that there are various ad hoc groupings, opportunistic formations also at community level, they can even be at the level of where, like the BBF, the Black Business Federation, who say they're provincial or national. But by and large, this is not one homogenous group. They rally around this whole idea of 30% procurement must go to black businesses. And this is markedly different from Black economic empowerment. And we'll see later on in the presentation, these groups don't really care about your shareholding. It's all about your supply chain. That's it. It's about inserting themselves into your supply chain. And so we draw a distinction between Black economic empowerment, which is we don't have any issues with that, and the demands by these extortive groups. The one thing we must say that many companies have come to us and asked us about approaches by community organizations. The act of going to a company and asking for donations, asking for community outreach as part of the CSI, that is not the issue here. So we have many companies interacting with legitimate community groups, NPOs and so forth, and even political organizations. This is a different ilk. This is a group of people, and literally their demands revolve around personal. It's personal gratification. They want to insert themselves into your supply chain for personal gain. So the sectors that have been impacted that we have seen, it started initially way back in the construction sector, but of late we've seen manufacturing hit, manufacturing of all sorts having been hit and demands being made. We've seen the transport sector. Some of you may know of the Intercape incidents. It's a bus company located headquartered in Cape Town, and the buses have been attacked in Eastern Cape and elsewhere in Cape Town as well by taxi associations. So you can see there also, it's not necessarily a political organization, but it's a taxi association or groupings. And unfortunately, there was an incident where a bus driver exited the depot and he was shot with an AK-47. He was killed. So these are by no means just a few chaps making a few demands and they'll go away. These things can become very, very violent. The other sectors that we've come across, it's also the mining sector. And these, my apologies, these groups, they know exactly, they look at your vulnerable spots. And that's why it's important. If you look at the locations of mining operations and so forth. So it's by no means just a phenomenon that has impacted the construction sector. It has gone wider, and it's also, if you look at the map, which is just a mere sample, we've had incidents in the Western Cape, incidents in Eastern Cape, even elsewhere. So this is just a sample of hotspots that we have identified from our clients and cases we've been involved in. So the one thing that we have also seen from some of these cases, and we'll come to the responses, is that these cases have gone on, and some of these actors they feel emboldened by the lack of response from the authorities, and I'm talking about the criminal justice cluster. The other point I must mention: many of the businesses, your small businesses in the townships, they have been victims of extortion for decades. So it's just that over the past few years we've just seen it become fairly organized. And this is the next slide deals with the typical demands that will come from these groups, and that's a picture of this and one incident only. And not all incidents take place in this manner, where people pitch up at your plant or your manufacturing facility with guns and so forth. They will come sometimes with an appointment, but in the extreme cases, we've seen them rocking up, breaching perimeters, ignoring security, and in a show of force. It's that shock and awe, where they come onto your premises with long guns, usually AK-47s, R5s, and so forth, or even and sidearms, and very persistent and insistent on getting the demands across to management. We've also, in some cases, we found that these groups have inside knowledge. Now, with this, I don't want to, the workforce is absolutely critical and I don't want to cast aspersions on, and I said that workers are part of it, but what these groups try to do is penetrate your facility and your workforce, and then try to get information on what would be the best way to enter, when certain management members will be on site and so forth. So the types of demands that they will make, it's really, I said, it goes around the 30% of all procurement. Their demand is that literally 30% of your procurement, whatever that procurement may be, should go to Black businesses. Some of the other demands include informing them of pending tenders, the contracts coming up for renewal. They invariably, it comes down to a monetary demand. Some of them will say that the company you lack, or the companies lack, or do not embark on community outreach projects, and they represent the community. Therefore, they want a cut of the pie, so to speak. The other part, they try to make it very formal. Many of these groups, by having feedback meetings, by having minutes and so forth. It all comes down to the fact that if you dig a bit deeper into it, you'll find that these groups, in really, it's about the individuals, it's about themselves. They do not, the extortive chaps do not necessarily represent the communities. Some of them may be members of political organizations that we found too, but it's by no means that their actions are sanctioned by political parties. So the other element, and the flip side, is that if their threats vary from protest action, closure of business, the safety of management personnel, and damage to assets. So we've seen closure of businesses being some of the risks that's high up. One of the higher risks is something that happens quite frequently. Now, when that does happen, I don't have to tell you, you're the experts on your business, and just the impact on not only the bottom line, the impact on the production, but also the duty of care. Because the last thing that I'm sure management will want is threats and to the workforce. So the duty of care is absolutely critical, and we found that with basically all of our clients, that was one of the main considerations. In one case, our client, a recent one, a multinational, decided just to close the business because they couldn't control the situation. They didn't feel comfortable that they could control the security situation, and they then basically closed the business. We assisted them with crisis management. So the impact on businesses is severe. I don't know if any of you have had those experiences, but definitely with the clients that we had dealt with, that was definitely something And you cannot just ignore these threats. Absolutely, you have to take them seriously from these groups whenever they occur. So some responses from businesses, we've seen some capitulating, ceding to the demands. And the one thing I can tell you that where we've seen, none of our clients have done it, but cases of companies that have acceded and made payments, it's like any other type of extortive activities and the risks associated with it. These guys come back. They come back for more. And there has been a feature, you think you make a once-off payment and they'll be gone, and hopefully, touch wood, they won't hit us again. We had found in many of the cases, colleagues, these extortive, these threat actors and these groups come back with the same demands, maybe in a different guise, but they will come back. The other instance, and as I said, I'm not trying to present a template to you in terms of responses, but there have been cases, and we have to be frank about it. There have been cases where companies just ignored the demands, and there were repercussions. If you look at the construction industry, some of the sites in, and these are roads and infrastructure in KwaZulu-Natal, these have been standing still and material lying on the side of the road for years. So that could even be the impact and the consequence of rejecting the demands. We would not, in having said that, our recommendation to our clients always is do not accede. Think of other measures to respond. But I must point out that yes, there have been cases of projects coming to a complete standstill and not being able to be implemented in the infrastructure space. The riding out the storm or putting your head in the sand, the ostrich approach, we've seen some of that. The other part of it is that other elements, some of our clients, I think the majority, one element that came through was lack of preparedness. Many of them had crisis management plans, security management plans, all the things that you need to have to improve safety and security, they had it in place. However, the problem was that these plans were just paper. They weren't tested. Certain key role players didn't know what they had to do if a crisis arose. So in the majority of cases that we had dealt with our clients and assisted our clients, we had found that the lack of preparedness was partly due to, in large part due to the fact that certain of the plans were just on paper. Now, the security plans and crisis management, business continuity, these are by no means plans that will ensure 100% protection. All it does is, and that's what we usually advise our clients, it improves your ability to respond effectively, because what these guys want, the objective is disruption, chaos, and keeping you on your hind foot, so that at the end of the day, while the companies are disorganized, they feel that they have the upper hand. And by having certain plans in place and having tested those plans, it just improves your preparedness. It creates that space to be able to respond more effectively, and then going further to deal with the crisis. So this is basically the responses we've had from our clients, right through from some not having security managers, right through to, and the majority of them, some of the plans not having been tested. One other element we also found is that the security service providers, that means the man guarding element, serious weaknesses, serious gaps in that. Many of our clients didn't know exactly what they were paying for. They had a security company at the gate. Either the security guard was sleeping, but nonetheless there was a breach. Now, the security industry, ladies and gentlemen, it's a high volume, low margin game. We're not in that space, but being risk advisors, we do interact with the security industry on an ongoing basis, and it is a low margin, high volume game. So what some of the practices, it's problematic. I can tell you, we have interacted with some of the big companies, the smaller ones, and we have found many gaps. And our advice to our clients, keep your security service provider accountable to certain key performance criteria or areas. The KPIs must be clear. Also, test their plans. I know many of us are not security managers and so we don't know what to look for, but keep them accountable that just for them to know that they will be held accountable to certain standards that may up the game. Now, I can tell you, once you take your foot off the gas, they will go back to old habits. But that was also another element of the weaknesses that we saw with many of the cases we dealt with. It is those companies providing physical security. It seems there's bodies there, if one or two, and that's it. You don't have any supervision, though the site plan is not known to anyone. So that is that's been identified as a major weakness. Moving on, colleagues, we've had, as part of it also, we had to deal with government. In one case, just to get our, sorry, before I get to the government responses, the last part of it in business response, I must just mention that where we've been able to get a degree of success was a comprehensive response of with lawyers, the interdict, with the police, and basically not sitting and to the demands and keeping the workforce safe. So it's a couple of things that our clients have done to ensure that they respond effectively to it without acceding to the demands. So the interdict route proved to be pretty useful in many of the cases because the perpetrators, some of them have risk exposure themselves. They are businessmen and they wouldn't be held, they don't want to be dragged into court, alternatively have a personal cost order and so forth. So we'd found that combination of the interdict to the lawyers, the crisis management part of it, but also reporting to the police being the most ideal response. It's not necessarily going to be the response, but we'd found that has worked for us in many of the cases. We've had situations where just last week or 2 weeks back, the perpetrators came back, notwithstanding an interdict. But that interdict and what we had in place gives us that extra ammunition to be able to force the authorities to act. So getting back to government responses, where we are now, colleagues, the government, this issue is known to the government and to the authorities. Just 3 weeks or 2 weeks ago, President Ramaphosa announced a task team to tackle the construction mafia. Now, I can tell you that task teams are, there've been a number of task teams within the police, within the provincial governments, and I don't think that is our assessment. We haven't seen quite good, well, we haven't seen any substantive results from all those task teams and what they've done. The phenomena has gone on, and we're not saying do not create task teams, but something practical has to be done. So the formation of a new task team for the construction mafia is, well, should be welcome, but we hope it doesn't end there. We recently had interaction with the presidency on the same issue, an official in the president's office, and they assured us that this official assured us that this phenomenon is known. There's an advisor to the president dealing with it. Our response to that is, and we welcome that, of course, but our response is that these groups have not seen any consequence to their extortive activities. And by and large, businesses have been left to fend for themselves. It's as if they are, my apologies, put this again. They have been left to their own devices, and it's the police have, I would say, in all fairness to the South African Police Service, they're under-resourced, but it's as if the message that companies get is you're on your own. Even trying to report a case of extortion is difficult. Trying to get them out to a site where these chaps are either blockading, preventing access or trespassing. Many of our clients have said that they did call, nothing happened. So at the tactical level, just the police responses have been fairly poor. We're underwhelmed by exactly what the police has been able to do. So what the net effect of that is that these extortion activities have continued. The groups feel that they can do so because there won't be any consequences. So where we stand currently is, yes, government is aware of it. The presidency is aware of it. The task teams have been created at national as well as provincial level. But it's years later, and wanting to be fair to government, but we have not really seen that these groups have been tackled with any degree of seriousness. So there's a lot that government can do to improve the situation and to tackle these groups, because it's not only about the cost of business, it's business confidence, but it's also the duty of care that management has to the workforce. So those issues, that's something that business on its own cannot resolve this problem. It has to be in constant with the collaboration with government. So getting where we and to close the last slide, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, we had found in our experience with the cases that we've dealt with that preparedness just creates that space. Being prepared creates that space for companies to respond more effectively, to know that if this happens, this is what I need to do. It doesn't mean the crisis will be over, but it just means that the management of the crisis will be a little bit better than being caught unawares by not knowing what to do. And these groups, as I said, they rely on chaos, disruption, and keeping you on your back foot. So it's important that you companies develop a degree of preparedness. And here we're talking once again about your crisis management. And I know it sounds old. You think of many people say all these plans, but I can assure you, by having the security management plan, your crisis management plan, business continuity. We all talk about cyber security, which is absolutely critical for us to do business, the way we transact and communicate. So too with physical security. Those plans are tested also, ladies and gentlemen. That we know that if there's an event that happens, be it a natural disaster. So these plans do not only come into play with extortive events, it also comes into play with natural disasters. Natural disasters such as the floods that we had recently in KwaZulu-Natal. If you look at July 2021 with these civil unrest, that was seen, and many analysts prior to that saw it as an outlier event. But I can assure you that those companies that had some plan in place, they were able to react better and they were prepared than those who did not. So these plans do not only come into play and when there's extortive events, such as what we're talking about today, but also it helps you when dealing with natural disasters and other types of events that test your ability to do business. The other part of it is naturally, security is only as good as its weakest link, with cliches, but that to involve staff in their own security too. And that we see as very important, that awareness among staff. The other part of it that we deal with is incident response. We once again want to emphasize to you that acceding to these demands is dangerous. Now, that doesn't mean that you, in order to give yourself space, that to in a sense of say, okay, we'll get back to you, that you're creating space for yourself to be able to think through things without acceding to it. That's natural. But the one has to be very careful not to create that expectation that indeed the demands will be met, because when it comes back, the response could be even worse. So that's, as I said, there's no one size fits all, but it's absolutely critical that you not accede to demands. I can tell you that the objective of the groups that we had found is to insert themselves into your supply chain. That's it. They don't care what goods or services have to be rendered. They just want to insert themselves in the middle and then ensure that basically they benefit financially from this. And I can tell you, once they are inserted in your supply chain, to get them out will be difficult. Now, so, the integrity of supply chain is, supply chains are under stress, depending on the sector, of course, as it is. To insert these groups and persons into the supply chain, long term, we said it's not sustainable, and you could actually result in more risks coming up for you. So we'd also advise the reporting, and many are reluctant to report the incidents to the police because of lack of confidence. Nothing will happen, but recording these incidents, it's important, because just getting that incident on record, and with the police, not necessarily insurance also, but the police and the authorities to act, that we see is important. Lastly, also, depending on the situation, the interdict route would be something to think of. If you don't have, and I would also advise you that get to develop internal capacity, at least people within your employ that have some degree of crisis management experience and know how to manage crises, and that these plans are tested. So you don't always want to call in consultants and so forth at great expense to deal with situations. Sometimes you have to, so bad you have to, but some cases it's about literally developing that resilience and that internal capacity to be able to deal with situations. The one thing that we always look at, I said there's three considerations. It's the commercial imperatives, you have to make money to survive. Second one, your compliance obligations. And third one is your operating environment. And we always advise our clients, get to know your operating environment, know what's happening in the communities that we're located. To get that, not necessarily, I don't call it intelligence, but that the heartbeat of the community. It's important that you get to know what's happening in the community, because to get that early warnings, if you can. That doesn't mean we're spying on the community, it's just that you're in touch with what's happening. And also, when it comes to responses, is that those communities and those community organizations could actually be part of a response to these extortive events, that they can actually assist you. So it's important that we understand, and with this, the commercial imperatives, the compliance obligations, also knowing and what's happening in our operating environment. Post-incident, absolutely important for us to see what we can do better once an incident has happened, what we can do to make it, how can we react better? Is it something that we should not have done? And I think those types of deliberations are absolutely critical to ensure that security is always an ongoing process. So ladies and gentlemen, I'll end there, and these are just some, I don't know if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask them. These are some of our experiences that we have had in dealing with these cases. And as I said, and I want to repeat myself again on this point, but preparedness was the key to just being able to respond effectively and to create that space to have a more sustainable and well thought through response to these extortive events. But the way we see it too, in terms of the phenomena, we do not see, it's our projection, that this will go down anytime soon. As the economic situation deteriorates and people are looking for, just at some desperation and so forth, but we see some of these groupings targeting other businesses. So we don't want to be, scaremongers, but this phenomenon will not go away in very soon. So it's really important that companies prepare themselves for not only these events, but natural disasters and other types of events that may impact on the business. So with that, I want to thank you for your time. And I don't know if you have any questions, I will open the floor. Thanks, Amanda.
Oh, thank you, Wayne. And that was a fascinating session. It really was. I've got a couple of questions myself, but I can see, Swati, you've got your hand up with a question.
Yes, thanks, Amanda. So, Winnie, in my previous experience, I have seen, area boys stopping product flow, and companies taking help of military police. So, I just want to check with you. Is that an option or no? Because a lot of time they do ask for ransom, and given the anti-bribery laws and all, companies are a bit divided because it's about the security of their employees plus the goods, and it may be a small amount, but then we have to look at from that aspect as well. So I just want to know, is there any option of having a contract with, say, military police or the local police, and then figuring out the ways, or no?
So I'm sorry, I didn't hear the contract with who?
Area boys, like these local goons who are stopping the product flow, or asking ransom for no particular reason, right?
Thanks for the question. It's a good one. Interestingly, we also had a similar question from something that happened in Nigeria, with a company facing a similar type of situation, and there was also a type of contract. The our concern, the risks involved with, if I could call it ad hoc contracting and contracting with parties that are not, the bona fides aren't known to you, is that you still run the risk of them coming back to you for more. So we say that if there's any contract and any party that if you formalize it, if in terms of the grouping that you're dealing with, it's known to you, you've done your due diligence on that group, that you're not dealing with the Al Capone who walks around like he's the Pope, but that you know that behind the facade, it's not just a facade, but that you apply the risk-based approach. Because if you look at your regulatory and your compliance obligations, the regulator says you have to apply a risk-based approach, but you are the expert on your business, so you should know what to do. The regulator doesn't say that. So it's absolutely critical that the contracting and whatever response, there's if you scratch beneath the surface, that we are compliant and we don't run the risk of causing more problems. I want to come back to the other point of some of these people are in the communities, and we would recommend getting to know those community-based organizations so that they can also assist you with the responses. So we would not recommend contracting or any form of agreement with ad hoc formations that may not stand up to scrutiny. I don't know if I've addressed your question, but that would be our response, Swati.
Yes. This is clear. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Swati, and to Wayne as well. I had a question myself, Wayne. Several of the member companies of SAMED are small businesses. So rather than medium to large size businesses, we've got a number of members that are small businesses. So across your experience, have you perhaps seen any difference in the risk to small businesses versus those larger businesses in terms of the shape and the form that it takes?
Yeah. A good question, Amanda. There are marked differences between the two. Even if you look at the groups that target the business, the small business, they're more prone or targeted for opportunistic types of extortive events. They're not very well organized, but they can also be very violent at times, with the threats being very serious. Also, we find that small businesses, their risk exposure, because of it's much greater sometimes than the bigger businesses. So your response there would be, it's difficult to employ a security manager. Doesn't make sense, because how do you pay that security manager? But also things such as, if there's a security company, little things one can do, keep the security accountable. Two is, if it does happen, okay, we are mom and pop store, we have only 3 management members. How do we react to it? Do we accede? Do we not accede? How do we go to the police? Do we get our lawyers? And that type of just basic planning would be without spending a lot of money on consultants and massive big documents. That we would recommend, that still the principle of being prepared, that you do that. Unfortunately, sometimes, and it's a fact that depending on locations and forth, these small businesses sometimes find themselves just acceding and saying, what can we do, because of lack of police. And that is an unfortunate reality that we are aware of, although we don't recommend it. We know that we are not in that position, that small business is in that position. Although we don't recommend acceding to it, but we have instances where small businesses are more prone to accede to demands than to give an fierce opposition to these groups.
Wonderful, thank you. And then I wanted to bring the pandemic into the questions as well, because we spoke about the violence that erupted in 2021. But have you seen a spike in risk that maybe could have been attributable to the pandemic itself, particularly in the type of coercion that's been taking place, or does the pandemic not actually come into the equation?
Well, the pandemic has been, it's unfortunate that an event such as the pandemic also was used by these groups. So it had two forms. The one part was, once again, businesses inserting themselves in the supply chain, having no history or track record in the industry, particularly when it comes to PPE and so forth, but inserting themselves because they have a corrupt official on the other side will give them the tender and they just have to source. So we found that part of it, which is just as bad, especially when it's not extortion, but it is corruption on a grand scale. And you would have seen, and you in the industry, you would have seen the cases and the extent of the losses that have occurred. The other part of it is we saw criminal elements also targeting just for the purposes of not just extortion, but just armed robberies, and it's targeted at PPE. So that was another risk that we saw. We actually dealt with logistics companies when it came to the vaccine on how to secure the vaccine because we had seen a trend with other PPE. So we then, you'd have seen we didn't work on it ourselves, but we were in discussions. You'd have seen the initial vaccines when the police were involved. It was armored vehicles and so forth. So those were the measures in response to this threat that had been identified by crime intelligence and by ourselves as well. So these groups will move from one opportunity to the next. And as I said, it started with construction. If there's something else that'll come up, I can assure you that they'll discuss how they can benefit from that event because money will be thrown at it. So yes, we have seen something similar with PPE, where right through from extortion to armed robberies, and it was the whole gamut of security risks.
Thank you. And then one final question from me. What would be your top 3 recommendations basically to SAMED members if you had to summarize those top 3 things to think about on reflection of what happened in 2021 and the pandemic itself and all of your risk experience? How would you bottle those top 3 main recommendations for members to think about?
Thank you, Amanda. And that's probably a good point to wrap it up. We would say, coming back to one, I would say, know your operating environment. Even if you're a small business, know what's happening in the community. Talk to, if there's, you get these street surfers who come by and useful sources of information. I mean, talking to your community-based organizations. Many companies do not have community liaison offices, but some of the workforce come from the community, or the workforce come from the community. Talk to them. That would be how one can know your operating environment, so that you doesn't mean that you insulated from attacks or anything like that, but it gives you that full knowledge at least. Hopefully it will. 2, I would say preparedness. Really, and we're not talking about big fancy plans, that you can take, and it's really comprehensive. Any plan, I've seen many plans and they bring you to tears how well it is written and drafted, but means absolutely nothing. We would say even it's the most simplest of plan, but just that sitting down and saying, okay, this is what's happening and this is how we can respond, be it to natural disasters and so forth. So when you know what's in the community, what's happening in your maintaining situational awareness is identifying your risks. Risk registers it's that sometimes it's something that companies have to do, but for smaller businesses, just know your risks. That's all. Know your risks from your operating environment. That'll improve. And then lastly, going on to your preparedness. And so the final point that I would want to say is know who has to do what. It's no use having those plans and no one knows if something happens, okay, what do we do now? Who does what? Not role play, but just know who will do what by when, and that hopefully will give you the chance and the ability to respond better on later. You're more than welcome to contact us, and even if it just doesn't require engagement, it's a discussion. More than welcome to take certain cases offline that you can't discuss here. Yeah, but that's an invitation to the membership. I don't know if it's another. Okay.
Thank you, Wayne. I can see another hand up as well. Tanya, did you want to add?
Yes, thanks, Amanda. I just want to make mention that this is not new to our sector. I have first-hand knowledge of a really very disturbing incident that happened in KZN with one of our members. And it has really frightened and shaken them up. So it's not only happening in other sectors.
Yep. No, that's true. That's true. That's true, Tanya.
We've had a couple of unpleasant situations as well, and it's easy to brush it under the carpet, and then the repercussions come later, particularly in terms of safety and well-being. Yeah, definitely. Thank you again, Wayne. I think that's been really valuable advice for everybody. So if there's no further questions, a big thank you from all of us for your time and your contribution this morning, Wayne. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me, colleagues. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Wonderful. So our second session this morning, and I'm just running a double check, Caroline, just to make sure that Michelle and Michael are actually available to kick off the second session.
Amanda, I see we are still waiting for Mr. Judin to join. Michelle is on. We might need to just take a short break as he was instructed to be on just before 10. So
Not a problem.
Session from 10.
Not a problem. So do we want to take a 10-minute break, Caroline, and come back just before 10 o'clock?
Michelle, would that be suitable?
Yes, I'm fine with that. So if everyone would like to grab a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or stretch your legs, we'll see you back at just before 10 o'clock. All right, then we'll see you just now. Wonderful. Well, I understand that Michael has joined us, and we'll be kicking off in literally another minute or so. We'll just wait for everyone to come back with their coffee and tea.
Good morning, Amanda.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, and you?
Lovely to see you.
Always good to see you. Are you warm?
I am. I'm in windy Cape Town, I have to say.
Well, we don't like the Cape Townians. You sent us your weather.
Definitely. I think there's some rain on the way for today. Definitely.
Yeah, there was some
Lovely to
early
see
morning
you.
rain here.
Ah, wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Right, everybody. I think we'll get started again. If you're ready to go, Michael.
I am I live?
Yes, you will be in a second. Caroline will do the magic. So welcome to our second session, everybody. And believe it or not, today, the 23rd of June, is International Whistleblowing Day. So in good timing for today's remembering, we're going to have a session on our hotline for whistleblowing and the importance of whistleblowing and upholding high ethical standards. And responsible for this session are Michael Judin and Michelle Tissong from Judin-Combrinck. So welcome to both of you. So as I said, today is International Whistleblowing Day. It's a day to celebrate whistleblowers and the important role that they play. It's only apt that we're joined by Michael Judin, who serves as an independent ethics chair for the SAMED whistleblowing hotline from Judin-Combrinck, as they provide an update on the hotline and the importance of whistleblowing and upholding high ethical standards. Michael is supported today by his colleague Michelle Tissong. Michael obtained his law degree at the University of the Witwatersrand and commenced practice in Johannesburg at the end of 1969. He's currently a partner in the Johannesburg-based law firm Judin-Combrinck, and Michael is a member of the King Committee and is also a non-executive ex officio director of and legal advisor to the American Chamber of Commerce in South Africa, or the AmCham as we know them. Michelle Tissong is an associate at the law firm Judin-Combrinck. She completed her BCom law degree, decided that she had not suffered enough, and enrolled to complete her LLB degree. Michelle has various experience in commercial law, labour law and litigation, and works very closely with Michael. So we're going to be taking questions at the end of this session as well, and welcome both Michael and Michelle to the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's always difficult to follow Amanda with her wonderful speech and dictation and grammar, but I'm going to do my best. Good morning to everybody on this freezing cold World Whistleblowers Day, as Amanda correctly said. So the word whistleblower is linked to the use of a whistle, which was used to alert the public or a crowd about problems such as a commission of a crime or the breaking of rules during a game. The phrase whistleblower attached itself to law enforcement officials in the 19th century because they used a whistle to alert the public or fellow police. Sports referees use a whistle to indicate an illegal or foul play, were also called whistleblowers. It's interesting that the English language has a good number of words which may loosely be defined as tattletale. This should come as no surprise, given that we appear to always have a good number of people doing something that calls for some tattling. What is surprising is that all the words for the person who's doing the tattling are somewhat uncomplimentary. If you see someone doing wrong and decide to tell someone about this, you may find yourself referred to as a snitch, a squealer, or a rat. One of the exceptions to the semantic realm of snitches get stitches is the word whistleblower, which is defined in law as one who reveals something covert or who informs against another. When whistleblower first came into use in the 19th century, it was not the type of word that we would define as it was a self-explanatory compound. While whistleblower may not be the word most people would like to put on their resumes, it at least can carry a sense of upright and concerned citizen, a sense of nobility, traits that are clearly lacking in a rat. So World Whistleblowers Day is an opportunity to celebrate those individuals who have bravely spoken up about a wide variety of issues, and also those organizations that have embraced and promoted the concept of whistleblowing and speaking out. In essence, providing channels for those important voices to be heard. Not only do these voices need to be heard, but the owner of a voice needs to know that having spoken up, there are investigation systems and processes in place to handle their concerns appropriately, and very importantly, to shield them from fear of retribution. There are numerous examples of how whistleblowers have changed the world for good, but Michelle and I also see daily examples of the negative consequences of not having a robust whistleblowing process in the news. You would be amazed in the governance work, the work through the King reports and codes, which Michelle's been at my side as we've worked through, how often and how many times I stop and think, I'll bet that company wish they had heard about that issue at an early stage when they could have done something about it. And in fact, often when Michelle and I do due diligences in acquisition work, one of the first things we look for is to see if there's a whistleblowing policy in the target organization. So we were initially contacted by SAMED in 2018 to attend a meeting which was to cover the possibility of a whistleblowing mechanism and to answer any questions which may arise in this regard. Fast forward 4 years, SAMED has developed a whistleblowing platform which not only provides a platform to persons who wish to point a spotlight on the unethical practices of its employers, assist in teaching employees about the intricate details of the code, but also to assist laymen and persons with simple queries such as determining whether a company is a member of SAMED or not. And it has actually become quite well known that SAMED has this policy, and once or twice in discussions about whistleblowing, people have referred to the very effective policy at SAMED, often not knowing that we're involved in it. In terms of the code, a complainant may lodge a complaint against any health practitioner, hospital, medical device company, or an individual. However, when the respondent, the person being complained about, is not a member of SAMED, SAMED has no jurisdiction. But in the discretion which I have, I can decide on further steps to be taken in the matter, including appointing an independent investigator, referring the complaint or the independent investigator's report to another authority, which includes regulatory authorities that are responsible for IVD regulation, device or IVD establishment, registration, the Health Professions Council of South Africa, the Nursing Council, Pharmacy Council or other professional bodies, the Hospital Association of South Africa, the Council for Medical Schemes, the Consumer Commissioner or the Department of Health, South African Police, the National Prosecuting Authority. Have I left anyone out, Mish? No. Michelle says no. Since the whistleblowing platform was finally up and running, we have received just under 20 reports. Before I highlight them, I just would like to take a moment to elaborate on what I said earlier, that we have no jurisdiction over non-members. So because SAMED is a voluntary organization with a code, which is in fact a contract between SAMED and its members, and it is not a statutory body, it cannot regulate people who are not members or legal persons who are not members of SAMED. This whole issue is presently about to come before our Supreme Court of Appeal and probably go to our Constitutional Court in the matter of the Advertising Regulatory Board as to whether or not they're also a self-disciplining body, as many of you know, and they are arguing for extended powers under the code. So the matter, which could have very important ramifications for SAMED and which we are following very, very, very closely, is it could change the position where SAMED will have jurisdiction over non-members. But at this point, no, they don't. We will keep you informed, and as I've said earlier, that judgment will have far-reaching consequences for this whistleblowing platform. But for now, as the law is, we have jurisdiction over members and only members. But as also said earlier, when we do receive a complaint, which is serious, then in the exercise of my discretion, we will recommend or ourselves refer it to the National Prosecuting Authority, the HPCSA, or whoever we believe should deal with it. And we have done this on several occasions. So I now wish to highlight a few cases which I believe to be of interest to this forum, cases which Michelle predominantly and us together have worked on. So the first one is we received a complaint which related to the altering of manufactured products. I can only deal with the matter on the papers which are provided to me. I have no statutory powers to demand other documentation. I decided to contact the complainant directly via email. The respondent, the person against whom the complaint had been laid, was not a member of SAMED, and therefore we had no jurisdiction over that party. What we did is we advised the complainant to report the matter to the Minister of Health and to the South African Police Service. We explained to the complainant that they would open a docket, enclose all documentary evidence of the sale of the manufactured product to the respondent, as well as proof of the alteration of such manufactured products to the investigating authorities for investigation. In that case, the complainant decided to stop supplying their products to the respondent in order to curb the manufactured products from being altered. The complainant also decided it did not wish to burden the Minister of Health, as it was, the office was at that time overburdened during the COVID-19 pandemic. The complainant advised that if they become aware of the continued activities of the respondent, they would report the matter to the South African Police Service. So whilst it was not a SAMED member, they received at no cost all the advice and guidance that they needed on how to deal with the matter. Another case which we dealt with was in regard to bribery and corruption allegations. In this case, bribery and corruption allegations were made against a respondent, a member of SAMED, and here it was alleged that the SAMED member was paying kickbacks to surgeons to encourage the use of their products. But the complainant referred to a third party making those payments and not the respondent. So typically, as you all know, the use of agents and consultants is a common practice in corruption and bribery allegations. So the payments were being made to an agent, and the agent then paid the surgeon. So there was no direct payment between alleged respondent and the doctors. We regarded it as very serious and elected that this needed further investigation. The respondent, as I said, was a member of SAMED and clearly bound by the code. But the third party, the agent that was being used, was not a member. We decided to appoint an independent investigator to investigate the matter further. That was a power which I have in terms of the code, and the independent investigator furnished their findings. The agent, who was not a member of SAMED, declined to cooperate or provide any information requested by the investigation team. In the circumstances, as I had no power to compel the handing over of any documentation and couldn't force them to do so by way of subpoena or any other power, I was limited to reviewing what was publicly available, given that the agent refused to make anything available. There was no contractual relationship between the SAMED member and the agent that we could ascertain. The complainant, as I said, was unable to provide any pertinent details such as specific dates, times, or provide any documentation to support the allegations. But because it involved bribery and corruption and surgeons, we regarded this as a very serious matter which should be investigated. We unfortunately couldn't do it. So here was a classic situation, an allegation of bribery and corruption, doctors being paid to use products, an agent being used, so the company against whom the complaint was leveled, paying the agent paying the doctor, no contractual relationship between the doctor and the company alleged to be paying. Unfortunately, we could only advise them to use the authorities because we couldn't take the matter further. One of the most interesting matters which we dealt with was a matter which went all the way to an appeal, and SAMED succeeded in the final appeal, which was very encouraging. This complaint dealt with comparative advertising. Comparative advertising, where a manufacturer of a product compares their product to the product of another, disparaging the product of the other and attempting to show that their product is superior. Clause 4 of the code provides that upon request, a company must, without delay, provide promotional material with accurate and relevant information relating to claims and comparisons about the products which the company markets. Substantiation for any information, claim, or comparison must be provided without delay. So here you see, looking back to what I was saying earlier, here, this is a contract between the member and SAMED, and contractually they are now obliged to give the documentation, information, substantiation, which I couldn't get where the party was a non-member. The advertiser submitted that the advertisement is supported by bench tests performed by Independent Testing Institute, applying recognized test methods and setups, and that the claim support is anecdotal and as claimed by the complainant. Despite numerous invitations by Michelle and myself and clause 4 providing for the delivery, as I've said earlier, and allowing them to submit it on a confidential basis, where it would only be seen by me and not by the other side, they refused to do so. So without this evaluation, I could not conclude whether the respondent's substantiation is in compliance with clause 4, and I therefore concluded the respondent was in breach for not providing the substantiation without delay. I referred the matter to the ethics panel of SAMED hearing. The ethics panel found that the respondent's submissions were to be rejected for the following reasons. They made reference to the fact that they could submit them on a confidential basis, so the argument that they would be seen by a competitor didn't hold water. They were requested to provide the substantiation on 3 separate occasions. They were granted extensions which they requested. They were given every opportunity to submit substantiation on a confidential basis to support what they'd said in this comparative advertisement. They took it, their attitude was stated in their final letter, where they said, "We believe that we have cooperated with you in this investigation to the extent possible. We've provided sufficient evidence and information rebutting the claims, and they consider the matter closed." The matter was then heard by a panel chaired by myself with 2 other members. There were oral submissions and documentation handed in. The panel made the following order: that they were in breach of clause 4, that they were required to remove the advertisement from all platforms within South Africa and issue a corrective statement. A fine was levied, which was to be paid to SAMED. They appealed this order. An independent senior junior advocate practicing at the Johannesburg Bar was appointed as the independent appeal chairperson. After considering the evidence and the judgment which I had delivered when the matter came before me, she found that we had ruled correctly, and her ruling was that she satisfied that the panel acted fairly and impartially, that we complied with the Constitution, that we complied with the principles of natural justice and just administrative action, that we followed the code in respect of merits and sanction, and she concluded by saying that she satisfied that our panel came to the correct decision and dismissed the appeal. This was a wonderful victory for SAMED, and a matter where everything was tested to the final degree on appeal, and a highly regarded and respected advocate found that all that we had done was correct. So I conclude by saying that the benefits of whistleblowing to wider society and the public interest are obvious. We must never forget the courage it takes for individuals to come forward and speak. And in this regard, I want to recognize Tanya and the support that she's received from so many of the board members. It's probably wrong to single out any one person. There's been much support, but I would like to just compliment and recognize our appreciation to Rob, who has always been so supportive of this initiative. In this following and having lived through now the Zondo report, we can see how critically important it is to deal decisively, quickly with corruption, which is arguably one of the most important branches of medicine, which is medical device and all that's related to it. And Tanya keeps reminding us that under no circumstances whatsoever, under her watch and under the watch of the board, will unethical conduct of any form or nature be tolerated. So we believe that this policy, which the board have approved and which has come at a cost, is doing much to improve the way in which the relevant professions and the public see the medical device industry and SAMED as an organization. So it's been a wonderful journey for us. We've learned lots along the way. Each matter is another learning experience. Each matter sends us back to the Constitution to have a look how we can improve, which is what everybody should be doing every day, learning a little more. And I want to conclude by thanking you, the members. It's your funds that have made this possible. This is a noble decision. There's no more lurking in the shadows in this industry. We fall well within the recommendations of the Zondo Commission as to what the public and civil society should be doing. And we look forward to continuing and growing this whistleblowing initiative of SAMED's. Jill and I are happy to take questions which you have. And thank you very much for having given me the time today. As I often say, in today's post-COVID world, one of the most important of assets is time, and thank you for giving that to us this morning. Thank you, Amanda.
Oh, thank you so much, Michael. A really wonderful session, and I think it's given everybody a very clear perspective of all the work and the different kinds of cases that you've been seeing over the past months. I can see one hand up from Rob. Rob, if you've got a question.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. And thank you, Michael, for your kind words. I think SAMED certainly has come a long way since the mid-90s when we started to craft this code of conduct. And in fact, my understanding, an international first. The support of the whistleblowing process, I think, has gained some momentum and gravitas, over the months and years since we've implemented it. There are two things that concern me. One is that there seems to be a lack of cases, if I can put it that way, coming forward. And I don't know whether it's in fact that because the industry is cleaning itself up and complying. I think we would be foolish to believe that there is no untoward activities taking place out there. There's no question about that. So, I just appeal to the members that are on the call and members at large, spread the word, and please let's rout out whatever undue activities are taking place. The other thing that I want to mention is just a comment is, in corruption, or you get two sides of the coin, and I appeal to everybody to expose the corruptor and the corruptee. name the parties on both sides. It's all well and good for us to be reporting. You know, you mentioned the third party payer handing over funds to surgeons, etc. Now, surely the perpetrator or perpetrators in this case must have had some knowledge of who the clinicians were who were actually receiving, you know, the brown envelopes, as it were. And I think it's very important when we bring these cases to you that it's not just the industry that we're looking at exposing in terms of these activities. We need to expose the clinicians, and those names need to be taken to the HPCSA, and the HPCSA needs to be held to account and investigate these people. So, you know, I just think we often say, oh, well, there's not much we can do. There's not much we can do. It's time, and we are as SAMED are embarking on a process where we are appealing to the medical societies to emansure that their members comply with our code and their code. So all I'm saying is that let's get together and let's route this out. It's just horrific to think that it's still taking place. Sorry, thank you. I went on a little bit there, but I think I've made my point. Thank you, Amanda.
Amanda, if I may respond through you.
Yeah.
One of the things which Tanya is to be complimented upon is the hard work that she did with Deloitte in regard to the setting up of the platform and the way this whistleblowing works. It is so confidential. It is so effectively and professionally done by Deloitte, and they truly are to be complimented on the whistleblowing platform that they operate and the way they negotiated with Tanya, how it would be run for us. And I mentioned that, Rob, because in answer to your first good point, I think that one of the things that perhaps we need to elaborate on a little more to the public is the confidentiality. Whistleblowers are scared to come forward because they're scared of retribution. You know, in a country where I'll kill you if you open your mouth is not just a threat, but happens. People are scared. And I think if they know what Tanya together with Deloitte have achieved, they would be keener to come forward. There's absolutely no way on earth that they can be traced. As long as when they make that call, it's from a number that can't be traced, and even if it can, Deloitte obliterate that. They can't suffer any retribution. And I think that's something which would go a long way towards addressing your first point. In regard to your second point, you've worked closely, Rob, with Michelle, and you know how she reacts to anything which smells of a breach of the law. And I can assure you that in that case where they made reference to the clinicians, Michelle did everything in her power, short of calling friends of hers from Sicily, to get the complainant to give us the names of the doctors. We tried as hard as we could. We had no power to compel, and they were refused to give us. It was just this broad statement that they're paying generally to doctors. But believe me, it wasn't for a lack of trying. And Michelle was often at the door of my office expressing her frustration that she couldn't get their names and see them in orange jumpsuits for what they were doing. Because I don't want to become emotional, but just think about this. Think about that the person lying on that hospital bed is you or one of your loved ones. And that there are two medical devices, one's good and one's inferior. And your life and the life of your loved one depends upon the right one. but the clinicians leaning over you has been paid to use the inferior one. I mean, just put this in context, how horrific it is. That clinician deserves to spend the rest of his or her life in an orange jumpsuit. They could be responsible for taking your life or the life of a loved one. We are very passionate about what we are doing. This is a very, very serious industry. We're not selling headphones or socks. We're selling something which is a difference between life and death. It's very, very serious. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Michael, and I think everybody would agree with you. And awesome points raised, Rob. Thank you for those. And I think even when the product is not the inferior one, to actually be financially incentivized for the use of any product is off the table. Whether your product is inferior or superior, it shouldn't take a financial incentivization to get a healthcare professional to actually use the right thing for the right patient at the right time. And they should be making that decision uninfluenced in terms of their decision making. So thank you, Rob, for those questions. Caroline raised a good question here in the chat. Are there any responsibilities that you can think of, Michael, in terms of actually going ahead and whistleblowing when you become aware of unethical conduct? So is there anything there that can nudge people along in terms of doing the right thing and actually whistleblowing?
I think, Amanda, just before I answer that question, can I just go back to your point about an inferior product? You're absolutely correct. When I said inferior, it was probably the wrong choice of word. It's a question of choosing a product which may not be the best product for that patient, but I need to pick up my envelope. So the patient becomes second and my envelope becomes first. So thank you for pointing that out. It's not necessarily inferior. It may not be appropriate. As to Caroline's point, I think we're going to see it in the next election. I think this country is, and there's no word in any language, in any country in the world, which is equivalent to the South African word gatvol. There's nothing in any language on earth that can describe that. And I think that's how South Africans are at the moment, the majority. There are those that thrive in that environment, but of this corruption and bribery, and seeing what's happened as we, without lights and water, and the recipients of that have got Bentleys and 3-story homes and private jets. I think we've all had enough. So I think that the environment at the moment is very conducive to encouraging people to report people who are acting unethically. And I think the only thing holding them back is retribution. So maybe something for Tanya and her board and management to think about is some kind of campaign which makes it clear what SAMED's doing, and something which underlines the confidentiality. There cannot be any retribution. The person who lays the complaint can never be identified, and supporting it together with some supporting documentation or statements from Deloitte. So I think if you take the environment in the country, the stage we've all reached with these people who've reduced us to this state, coming to an election which is going to see a dramatic change as we start to rebuild the country, I think the environment's ripe now for us to make it known to the public and to everybody in the industry and beyond that this platform exists from SAMED, and please report. And also to let people know the degree of investigation that goes into it after the complaint. We don't just get a complaint and accept that that complaint's correct. Firstly, it's gone through the whole Deloitte system of voice checking and all of the other things which Deloitte do. By the time we get it from Deloitte, it's already been carefully analyzed. Then we get it. And Rob and Tanya know Michelle. If I don't act immediately and as viciously as possible, Michelle doesn't let go. And so we make absolutely sure, and we've got the full support of Tanya at all times, that this is investigated to the nth degree. And that's why the third case that I illustrated for you was so heartwarming for us, because they're spurred on by Tanya and the board. We took that matter all the way to final appeal, where we succeeded. And the very important part of that appeal, if I could just repeat it, is that the advocate, a highly respected advocate, said that in her opinion, and I'm reading from it, we acted fairly and impartially, that we complied with the Constitution, South Africa's Constitution and ours, that we applied the principles of natural justice and the principle of just administrative action, and that we followed the code in respect of merits and sanction. What a wonderful recognition for the way SAMED is operating. Very few judgments receive that kind of judicial recognition. So I think we're all encouraged at SAMED, and to answer the points which have been made, Caroline, Rob, yours, Amanda, all we now need to do in this environment which we have in the country is to encourage people to come forward, secure in the knowledge that there'll be no retribution and that it will be investigated in accordance with that judicial recognition of the way SAMED does it.
Thank you, Michael. I think, and I'm spotting a couple of other questions, and they're following a theme that obviously SAMED doing a wonderful job, Deloitte helping out, yourselves on the panel, where things need to be referred on to our regulatory authority, SAPRA, or even to the police. What is your sense of those parties? Do you feel that there's the potential for them to come around and actually be part of the system, because they say they want to receive these reports, but then it's the doing something about it? So your sense of the regulatory authority, your sense of the police, do you think there is a future where probably they will give a better sense of urgency and an outcome to these incidents from their side?
It really breaks my heart, and I mean it sincerely, as someone who loves this country dearly, to have to answer you, but I need to do it honestly. The problem is that when it reaches those bodies, nothing happens. So all that we can hope for is that as we come to this groundbreaking election where we're going to see for the first time in South Africa's life coalition politics, independent people, and the changes that can be brought about. Hopefully then we'll see things. And there are green shoots. In the area in which I live, a young black woman, a member of the DA, was voted in this ward. For 3 or 4, possibly more years, nothing but nothing was done in the suburb. She's been in office for not more than a year. The potholes have been fixed. The water pipes are currently being replaced. The suburbs are a hive of activity. Complaints are dealt with. So whilst one person can't change the world, she can change your world. And she's making a huge difference. And there are many more Belindas. And the Belindas are coming to the fore. And they will come more strongly to the fore as a dominant party disappears and you see coalition politics, independent people and young people, black, white, brown, men and women, and all other genders, committed to wanting to save and rebuild the country. And it's the green shoots are there and it's going to happen. We're at the very, very beginning of a remarkable turnaround in the country. And so at this stage, sadly, I must say to you that with few exceptions, it's not dealt with by the authorities, but it is starting to change. And I think that as we get closer to this new dispensation in South Africa, it'll change faster and faster as we move from cadre deployment to people of merit, like Belinda in the ward in which we live.
Thank you, Michael. And on that cheerful note, I think it's a good one to leave everyone with in terms of possibility for the not too distant future. It's not far away. The opportunity to really make a change and make a difference is just ahead of us. It really is. So a very big thank you to Michael. And I can see that Michelle's in the background there, also helping out as well. And thank you to both of you for your time and your participation in the session today. It's been really interesting. To Rob for your great questions, to Caroline for my speaker notes. Thank you very much, Caroline. It's made it so much easier. And we look forward to seeing you all at our next session in the not too distant future. And yes, thank you everybody for your participation and your contribution. And let's get out there on Whistleblowers Day and actually make a difference in terms of the environment that we all work in, for the betterness of the treatment of patients, which is what we're all here for at the end of the day. Thank you to everybody very much and have a wonderful day. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, Amanda. Goodbye.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome, Michael.